Zeus, the ruler of Mount Olympus, was known not just for his power, but also for his insatiable love life. His affairs were legendary, filled with deception, desire, and divine consequences. But one scandal stood out among all. A love that shook the heavens and threatened the balance of the gods. It all began when Zeus set his eyes on a mortal woman named Callisto. She was a devoted follower of Artemis, bound by a vow of chastity, but Zeus was determined. Disguising himself as Artemis, he lured her into the depths of the forest, where fate took a turn that neither of them expected. Callisto's betrayal shattered her world. She had dedicated her life to the goddess, yet she found herself carrying Zeus's child. When Artemis discovered the truth, the punishment was swift. Callisto was cast out, stripped of her place among the sacred huntresses. But the wrath of the gods did not end there. Hera, Zeus's wife, was furious. Her vengeance knew no bounds. She cursed Callisto, turning her into a bear, forever wandering in the wilderness. Zeus, despite his power, could do nothing to stop it. He had conquered her heart, but he had doomed her soul. But Callisto was not the only victim. Zeus's passions led him from goddess to mortal, weaving a web of chaos across the heavens and earth. He fell for Leda, approaching her in the form of a swan, leaving behind a lineage that would shape the fate of Greece. He pursued Europa, arriving as a magnificent bull, carrying her across the sea to an unknown land. He sought Alcmene, deceiving her by taking the form of her own husband, leading to the birth of Heracles. Each affair left behind whispers of betrayal, echoes of love, and curses that stretched through generations. But among all his conquests, one stood apart: Io, the priestess of Hera. She was young, beautiful, and devoted to the queen of the gods. Yet Zeus, unable to resist, approached her under the cover of night. Their love was forbidden, dangerous, and hidden from the world. But secrets never stayed buried in Olympus. Hera's suspicions grew. She sensed betrayal in the air, the unmistakable scent of Zeus's infidelity. She descended to the mortal realm, her presence casting a shadow over the land. Zeus, desperate to protect Io, acted swiftly. He transformed her into a white heifer, hoping to deceive his jealous wife. But Hera was not so easily fooled. She demanded the heifer as a gift, and Zeus had no choice but to comply. With Io in her possession, Hera appointed Argus, the 100-eyed giant, as her eternal guardian. His eyes never closed, watching over Io with relentless vigilance. She was trapped, a prisoner in her own body, longing for freedom. Zeus, helpless and tormented, turned to Hermes, the trickster god. Under the cover of music and cunning, Hermes lulled Argus into a deep sleep, slaying him with a swift stroke. Io was free, but her suffering was far from over. Hera, still burning with vengeance, sent a gadfly to torment her, forcing her to wander the earth, restless and in pain. Io's journey became one of legend. She roamed across lands and seas, chased by unseen forces, seeking peace she would never find. She crossed the Bosphorus, named after her suffering, the Passage of the Cow, and reached Egypt, where at last Zeus intervened. He pleaded with Hera, swearing to abandon Io forever if she would lift the curse. Reluctantly, Hera agreed. Io was restored to her human form, and in time she bore a son, Epiphus, a child of both pain and destiny. But Zeus, despite his love, had already moved on. His heart, restless as the wind, sought new desires, leaving behind another tale of sorrow and longing. Zeus's desires knew no boundaries, and his next conquest would once again shake both the heavens and the earth. His eyes fell upon Semele, a mortal princess of Thebes, whose beauty rivaled even the goddesses of Olympus. She was innocent, unaware of the divine storm brewing around her. Zeus approached her in secret, whispering promises of love and devotion. Their affair flourished in the shadows, but nothing remained hidden for long. Hera, ever watchful, discovered the betrayal and devised a cruel plan. She disguised herself as an old woman, weaving doubt into Semele's mind, planting a deadly seed. "If Zeus truly loves you," she whispered, "ask him to reveal himself in his full divine form." Blinded by trust and desire, Semele made her request. Zeus hesitated, knowing the truth. No mortal could witness his divine presence and live. But bound by an unbreakable oath, he had no choice. He revealed his true form, lightning and thunder crashing around him. The sheer power of his presence consumed Semele instantly, reducing her to ashes. But in that tragic moment, Zeus acted. From the flames, he rescued the unborn child she carried, Dionysus, the future god of wine and ecstasy. He stitched the child into his own thigh, carrying him until the time of birth. It was a tale of love and ruin, passion and destruction, another tragedy left in Zeus's wake. Yet, even as the pain of Semele's fate lingered, Zeus's heart wandered once more. He set his sights on Ganymede, a mortal prince of Troy, whose beauty was unlike any other. This time, Zeus did not disguise himself, nor did he seek consent. He descended in the form of a mighty eagle, snatching Ganymede from the mortal world and carrying him to Olympus. There, he granted him immortality, making him the cupbearer of the gods. But what seemed like a divine honor was, in truth, another possession. Another soul taken by Zeus's endless desires. The heavens watched in silence, knowing that this was the way of their king. Love, for Zeus, was never gentle. It was a force of nature, as powerful as his thunder, as fleeting as the passing storm. But even the gods had limits, and Zeus's relentless desires began to stir unrest in Olympus. His affairs had not only caused suffering among mortals, but had also created tension among the gods. Hera's rage burned hotter than ever, but she was not the only one who resented his actions. Even his own daughters, Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, looked upon their father with disapproval. Yet Zeus remained unmoved, believing himself untouchable. He was the king of the gods, the ruler of the skies. Who could dare challenge him? But the consequences of his actions had already begun to unfold in ways he never expected. Among the most tragic tales was that of Leto, another lover of Zeus who suffered at the hands of Hera when Leto became pregnant with twins, Apollo and Artemis. Hera's fury reached its peak. She forbade Leto from giving birth on any land under the sun, forcing her to wander in agony, searching for refuge. At last, she found solace on the floating island of Delos, a place that was neither land nor sea, where she gave birth to two of the most powerful Olympians. Even in victory, her suffering was not forgotten. She had borne the children of Zeus, but at the cost of her own peace, forever marked by Hera's vengeance. But Hera's punishments were not always directed at Zeus's lovers. Sometimes they fell upon his children. One of the greatest examples was Heracles, born from Zeus's affair with Alcmene. Hera despised him from birth, sending serpents into his crib to kill him as an infant. But Heracles, even as a newborn, was strong. He crushed the serpents with his bare hands, proving that he was no ordinary child. His life was destined for greatness, but it was also cursed. Hera ensured that every step of his journey was filled with hardship.
from the 12 labors to the madness that led him to slay his own family. He was Zeus's son, but that did not spare him from the wrath of a betrayed goddess. Despite the suffering left in his wake, Zeus continued his conquests, each one weaving a new chapter of love, betrayal, and divine consequences. One of his most infamous affairs was with Europa, a Phoenician princess whose fate would change the course of history. Unlike his previous seductions, Zeus approached Europa with a different strategy. Deception in the form of beauty. He transformed himself into a magnificent white bull, gentle and alluring. When Europa and her maidens wandered near the shore, she was captivated by the creature's grace. Hesitantly, she climbed onto his back, unaware of the storm that awaited her. The moment she settled, Zeus charged into the sea, carrying her far away from her home. Europa cried out, but there was no escape. The waves roared around her as the bull swam across the vast ocean, heading toward an unknown land. When they reached the island of Crete, Zeus revealed his true form, declaring his love for her. But what choice did she have? She had been taken, stolen from her world, with no way back. From their union she bore 3 sons, one of whom, Minos, would become the legendary king of Crete. But Europa's story was not one of romance. It was one of abduction, a fate dictated by the desires of a god who took what he wanted, leaving behind only legends and sorrow.
Yet Zeus did not stop. His thirst for love and power intertwined, each affair strengthening his dominion. He turned his eyes to Danae, a mortal princess whose fate had already been sealed by prophecy. Her father, warned that her son would bring his downfall, locked her away in a bronze tower, hoping to prevent her from ever conceiving a child. But no cage could keep Zeus away. He descended in the form of golden rain, slipping through the cracks, merging with Danae in a way that defied mortal understanding. From this divine encounter, Perseus was born, the hero destined to slay Medusa and change history. But Danae's suffering was far from over. Cast away by her own father, she and her son drifted at sea, left to the mercy of fate. Zeus had given her a child, but he had also given her a life of exile and struggle. Another woman abandoned in the wake of his divine hunger. Zeus's affairs were not just stories of passion, but also of manipulation and power. Many of his lovers were not willing participants, but victims of his divine authority. One such tragedy was that of Antiope, a Theban princess known for her unmatched beauty. Zeus, unable to resist her charm, took on the form of a satyr, a wild, lustful creature of the forests. In this disguise, he approached Antiope, overpowering her in a moment that changed her life forever. Shamed and afraid, she fled her homeland, seeking refuge in distant lands. But her suffering had only begun. When she gave birth to twin sons, Amphion and Zethus, she was captured and enslaved by the cruel Queen Dirce, who tormented her for years, blaming her for a crime she never chose. But fate had its own plans. Antiope's sons, now grown and strong, discovered the truth about their mother's suffering. Fueled by anger, they rose against Dirce, exacting their revenge by tying her to the horns of a raging bull. Antiope was finally free, but her heart remained scarred. She had been used and discarded by Zeus, left to endure years of torment while he sat upon his throne, untouched by the chaos he had caused. Her sons would go on to shape history, but her own tale remained one of sorrow, another name in the long list of Zeus's conquests. Yet, despite the suffering he caused, Zeus saw himself as a protector of mortals, even as he disrupted their lives. His affair with Nemesis,
the goddess of retribution, was the ultimate irony. She despised injustice, yet she became another victim of his pursuit. To escape him, Nemesis transformed into various animals, racing across land and sea to evade his grasp. But Zeus was relentless. In the form of a swan, he finally caught her, and from their union, an egg was laid. An egg that would hatch into Helen of Troy, the woman whose beauty would ignite the Trojan War. Even the greatest conflicts in history could be traced back to Zeus's insatiable desires. His legacy built upon love turned to ruin, passion turned to war. As Zeus's affairs continued, the consequences of his actions spread like ripples across the mortal and divine realms. While he remained unchallenged as the king of the gods, those left in his wake suffered the burden of his desires. His pursuit of Aegina, the daughter of the river god Olympus, was another tale of destruction disguised as love. He descended upon her in the form of an eagle, snatching her away to a deserted island where he claimed her as his own. From their union, a son was born, Aeacus, who would become a great king. But Hera, still burning with vengeance, unleashed a deadly plague upon Aeacus's people, wiping out most of his kingdom. Once again, Zeus had moved on, but those he touched were left to bear the punishment. Another tragic affair was that of Caliru, a naiad nymph whose life was forever changed by Zeus's pursuit. She was a spirit of the rivers, bound to the waters, yet Zeus desired her beyond reason. Their brief union resulted in the birth of Orithyia, a woman fated to be swept away by another powerful deity, Boreas, the god of the north wind. Zeus's influence did not end with his lovers. It extended to their children, shaping destinies that would echo through time. Some became heroes, others became rulers, but many suffered under the weight of their divine lineage. But perhaps one of the most infamous tales of Zeus's love affairs was that of Persephone, the daughter of Demeter. Though her most well-known story was her abduction by Hades, few knew of Zeus's role in her fate. Before Hades took her, Zeus himself had desired her. And through their brief, unspoken union, Zagreus, the first Dionysus, was born. But his existence was doomed. The jealous Titans, acting under Hera's influence, tore the infant Zagreus apart, devouring his remains. Only his heart was saved, later reborn into a new form. It was a dark and painful truth hidden within the myths. A reminder that Zeus's desires often led to destruction, even among his own divine bloodline.
Despite the pain and destruction left in his wake, Zeus continued to pursue love, each affair adding another layer to his complex legacy. His desire was boundless, reaching even those who were reluctant or unwilling. One such story was that of Taygete, one of the 7 Pleiades, daughters of the Titan Atlas. She was a devoted follower of Artemis and had taken a vow of chastity, hoping to escape the attention of gods and mortals alike. But Zeus did not care for vows or devotion. He pursued her relentlessly, forcing her to flee into the wilderness. In her desperation, she prayed to Artemis for protection, and the goddess, pitying her, transformed Taygete into a doe. Yet even this could not save her. Zeus found her, took what he wanted, and left her to bear his child. Lacedaemon, the future founder of Sparta. But not all of Zeus's affairs were driven by force. Some were unions of power, strategic alliances that strengthened his rule. His relationship with Themis, the goddess of divine law and order, was one such case. Together, they brought forth the Horae, goddesses of the seasons, and the Moirai,
the fates, who controlled the destiny of all beings, even the gods themselves. It was a rare moment where Zeus's love bore something other than tragedy, a balance to the chaos he so often left behind. Yet, even Themis, wise and just, eventually distanced herself from him, knowing that no woman, mortal or divine, could ever truly hold Zeus's heart. One of his last great affairs was with Mnemosyne, the Titaness of memory. Unlike his usual pursuits, this was a calculated seduction. Over 9 nights he lay with her, and from their union the 9 muses were born. These daughters became the source of all art, music, and poetry, shaping human culture for generations. It was perhaps one of Zeus's few legacies that did not end in suffering. But even as the muses inspired the world, the stories of Zeus's lovers continued to whisper through time. Tales of power, desire, betrayal, and loss. A reminder that even the king of the gods was not above the chaos he had created. As Zeus's list of lovers grew, so did the resentment among gods and mortals alike. He was the ruler of Olympus, yet his actions often led to suffering rather than harmony. His conquests were not just stories of passion, but also of imbalance, of power wielded without consequence. Though he continued to reign supreme, whispers of discontent spread through both realms. The mortal world, shaped by his desires, bore the scars of his interference, and even among the gods his authority was quietly questioned. But Zeus, ever confident, remained unmoved. He had shaped the cosmos, defeated the Titans, and claimed the throne of Olympus. Who could challenge him? Yet, one final affair would expose the limits of his power. His pursuit of Alcmene, the wife of Amphitryon, was unlike the others. Instead of descending as a god, Zeus took on the form of Amphitryon himself, deceiving Alcmene into believing she was lying with her husband. From this deception, Heracles was born, a son both blessed and cursed. Unlike Zeus's other children, Heracles would not simply live in the shadows of his father's deeds. He would rise, suffer, and struggle, ultimately proving himself as one of the greatest heroes of all time. But his birth marked a shift in the heavens. It was not just another affair. It was the beginning of something far greater. In the end, Zeus remained the supreme ruler, but his legacy was forever tied to his lovers, his children, and the chaos he left behind. His desires shaped the fate of heroes, the fall of cities, and even the very myths that defined civilization. Yet, despite all his power, he could never truly control the consequences of his actions. He was the king of the gods, but he was also their greatest contradiction. A ruler who sought order yet thrived in chaos. A protector who caused destruction. A lover whose touch often brought ruin. His story was not just one of power, but of the cost that came with it. Zeus may have ruled the heavens, but his love life was a storm of desire, betrayal, and consequence. His legacy remains a reminder that even the most powerful are not free from the chaos they create. The myths of Zeus are not just stories of gods and mortals. They are reflections of power and its consequences. They remind us that every action, no matter how great, has a price. What do you think? Were Zeus's actions justified, or was he a ruler who abused his power? Let us know in the comments.